All right, 7 mental laws. The law of control. Now, the law of control says that you feel positive about yourself to the degree to which you feel you are in control of your own life. And their psychologists call this a sense of coherence, a sense of control. It means that when you feel you're in control, you feel happy. You feel at peace with yourself. And you feel negative about yourself to the degree to which you feel you are not in control of your own life. You feel you are controlled by your bills, by your bosses, by your health, by your debts, by your family, by your obligations. When you feel that you're not in control or out of control, you feel highly stressed. And so we have this little diagram here, internal versus external locus of control. This is what psychologists use. They say you have an internal locus of control here where you are happy, and then you have a scale, and you have an external locus of control. The internal locus of control is where you feel that you're in charge of your own life. You make your own decisions. Americans in general, by the way, have a much higher sense of inner control than most countries in the world, than all countries. Europeans, 58% of Germans, for example, highly structured economy, believe that they have little or no control over their future. A person with internal locus of control says, I make my own decisions. I am where I am and what I am because of myself. I'm in charge of my life. A person with an external locus of control feels that other people are in charge of their life, their boss, their bills, and so on. Now, you are here, and you are moving in one direction or another with every decision that you make. The good news is that when you develop an internal locus of control, you feel really happy and strong, and you're much more positive and you're much more creative. And that's the goal that we're aiming for. The people with a high internal locus of control feel really, really good about themselves. They feel powerful, they feel empowered, they feel strong. And here's an interesting point, is you can never give away control, except to other people. You can give away your control to other people, but you still remain responsible. We'll talk about this later. So control begins with your thoughts, and your thoughts determine your feelings, and your feelings then determine your actions. I have a friend who has a little stick-on that he gives you to stick anywhere you want, and it just says C-Y-T. Control your thoughts. Control your thoughts. And if you control your thoughts, you can control everything else. Your thoughts are the guidance mechanism of your life. So control your thoughts. And when you control your thoughts determine your feelings. By the way, great question, which comes first, thoughts or feelings? And the answer is always thought. And I'll tell you why. It's because it is the thought that creates the feeling. It's how you think about something that is happening in your life that triggers the emotion. For example, you could get stuck in traffic, and one person could be frustrated and angry and pounding on the horn and waving at the other drivers with one finger. And the other person could be sitting quite calmly and planning their day and listening to a Brian Tracy educational CD. The critical thing is the way you think determines it. At the University of Pennsylvania, they did 22 years of study, and they came up with a concept called explanatory style. You've heard the NLP people talk about framing and reframing. Well, explanatory style says that the way you explain things to yourself largely determines your emotions, largely determines your thoughts, your reactions, your responses, largely determines the total quality of your life, how you explain things to yourself. And so if you explain things in a positive and constructive way, then what happens is you respond positively and constructively, you feel differently, you take different actions, and you get different results. Now, the next law is the law of accident. And the law of accident is actually a metaphysical concept. The law of accident says that everything just happens by accident. It's not what you know, but who you know. It's you can't fight City Hall. The cards are stacked against you. We have in our society an enormous number of people who are led to believe that they are victims, that there's nothing they can do about their situation. And you read all this stuff in the paper all the time by, unfortunately, ill-informed people who say, you know, there's great powers out there that are holding down the working person and so on. This is all nonsense. It's all sort of fantastical things like believing in life on the other side of the moon. But nonetheless, they convince themselves of that, and they feel that there's nothing you can do. The greatest enemy of human success is passivity, is people feel passive, feel helpless. It's called in psychology learned helplessness. They feel helpless. They feel there's nothing I can do. My debts are too high. The economy is too bad. Life is terrible. I was at a meeting with a bunch of people for 3 days on Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday. This room is full of people, almost all entrepreneurs, and some of these people are having the best years of their lives. Some of these people are generating embarrassing amounts of income. They're successful, and they're all hustlers. They're all working day and night, and they're there. It's a mind-storming, brainstorming to share ideas on different ways to create and sell more products and services and so on. They're totally proactive, and there's no negativity in the room at all. I mean, everybody is just sparkling because they're all bouncing off each other in terms of actions that you can take. Whereas the great majority of people have this learned helplessness. There's nothing I can do. My hands are tied. I mean, look at the situation. Nobody's got any money. The economy is bad. And this wah, 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 wah. And so the law of accident, as you see, is completely opposed to the law of control. We say failing to plan is planning to fail. Failing to plan is planning to fail. So if you don't have a very clear, specific, written plan with goals and actions and priorities that you're working on every day, well, then your life will just drift around in a circle. You know, they say a ship without a rudder will just drift completely, but a ship with a rudder and a compass will go straight and true to its destination through any type of sea. And once we have a very clear rudder and compass, which we will have tomorrow, then suddenly we start to make incredible progress at a faster rate than you can imagine. So, number 3, the law of cause and effect. Now, this was the granddaddy law that really changed my life. The law of cause and effect says that for every effect in your life, there's a specific cause. Now, this law is completely opposed to the law of accident and completely consistent with the law of control. It means that everything that happens to us for a reason. Even if we don't know the reason, it happens to us for a reason. We say that success is not an accident. Failure is not an accident. They all have specific causes. And here's the great rule. If you want to double your income or anything else, what you do is you realize that everybody who is earning twice as much as you today was at one time earning half as much as you. It's the way it works. Nobody was born earning twice as much. They started off at the bottom at a very low-wage job. So then they did certain things differently from you, and now they're earning twice as much or 5 times as much or 10 times as much. Well, then what we do is go back and find out what they did, and we do the same thing. And we say success leaves tracks. Is if you find out what other successful people did, and you do the same thing, you'll eventually get the same results that they do. And if you don't, you won't. And here's the most amazing thing with regard to these laws. These are mental laws. A physical law you can see, like gravity. You can drop something, and you can see. You can see the results of a physical law. Mental laws, you can only see the results over time. But physical laws are just as fixed as mental laws. And mental laws work 100% of the time. And what that means is that, it's interesting, they say that in all of human history, man has never invented a law. You know, we talk about all the laws of physics and mathematics and mechanics and velocity and the laws of Einstein and so on. Nobody's ever invented a law. We've only discovered the laws that already existed. Now, whatever your spiritual beliefs are, I remember listening to Billy Graham on a talk. I was driving through the Central Valley near Fresno many, many years ago, and it was on the radio. It was late at night. It's the only thing to listen to. And here's Billy Graham talking about all the laws that hold the universe in place. He says, if you have all of these laws, then there must have been a lawgiver. These laws could not have just happened spontaneously out of the primordial muck going back a billion years after the Big Bang. If you have all of these laws that really explain everything that happens, even laws of mathematics that take 100 years for a person to fully understand, that explains with absolutely unpredictable accuracy a mathematical formula. Where do these laws come from? Anyway, my point is that these laws are neutral. They work for you or they work against you. And so we say that nature is neutral. Nature is like justice. Nature is blind. Nature doesn't say you will be a big success and your life is going to suck and you're going to be in between. Nature doesn't care. Now, this was a great breakthrough for me. Nature doesn't care. Nature says that if you do what other successful people do, you get the same result. And if you don't, you don't. And nature's not involved in it. Nature just says, here's the laws, here's the playing field, here's the rules of the game. If you play the game well, you have a great life. And if you don't, you don't. But there's nothing out there that is determining what happens to us. It's all in here. And these mental laws are important. I remember I was in Istanbul some years ago, and there was a story in the papers in Istanbul. I was traveling at the time, And it was about a young American student who had gone to Istanbul as a tourist. He was traveling with some other people. And one day they were sitting in one of the cafes, and there's a whole bunch of people marching with posters and chanting in Turkish, and they're marching down to the main square. Well, he says, hey, I know marches. We do marches on the campus. We do demonstrations. I know all about this. Hey, let's go get a piece of this. And they said, no, we don't know what they're doing. His friend said, we don't know what they're marching for. It doesn't matter. It's just a demonstration. So he went out there, typical American student. He said, yay, yay. He's trying to imitate the Turks, and they gave him a poster. And so he's going, yeah, yeah, and everybody's saying, yeah, and they're all slapping him on the back. He's going, this poster. And they march into the square, and the square was immediately surrounded by police. And all of these people were arrested. And what he didn't realize is they were advocating the downfall of the government. And in Turkey, it is a capital offense to advocate the downfall of the government. He was arrested. He was brought up in front of a military tribunal within 2 days, tried, convicted, and sentenced to death. And sentenced to be carried out in 2 more days. And by this time, his friends, who followed along at a distance, they'd gone to the embassy, they'd gone to the consulate, they ran it around in circles, and they did everything possible. And Turkey happens to have a colorful attitude toward money. So they managed to buy him out of prison. His parents had to sell their home back in the United States. Cost him $250,000 to get him out. And he was saved and speared across the border a few hours before he was going to be executed. And I remember that story because it was a true story. True stories are good. Here's the point. He didn't know the law. And in not knowing the law, there's no excuse for it. They don't care. He said, well, I'm a stranger, I'm a foreigner here, I didn't know that it was a capital offense. Excuse me. He said, they don't care. You violated the law, you can execute it. And in life, we violate a lot of laws. We violate a lot of natural laws, especially mental laws. And when we violate those laws, we suffer the consequences of it, whether we knew about the laws or not. If you step off a 10-story building in downtown San Diego, you're going to go splat on the sidewalk. And it doesn't matter whether you knew about the law of gravity, or whether you approved of the law of gravity, or whether anybody had explained the law of gravity to you. The law of gravity is going to work on you, and you're going to go splat on the sidewalk. The law is neutral. The law doesn't care. You know, thou shalt go splat, and thou shalt rise up, and thou shalt go half splat. No. In other words, the law is there. So all successful people do what we call a harmonic convergence. Have you heard of a harmonic convergence? They had this, I think, back in the 80s or 90s, where you have all the planets line up. They all line up at one particular time in the constellation. This happens every, I don't know how many years. And so all the planets are in line. You know, the Mercury and the Saturn and the Earth or Mars and then Earth and all these, and they all line up. And the magnetic power of all of these is supposed to bring about enormous changes, none of which happen. But it seems like a great idea. Our life, though, is to get our life in harmony with the great mental laws. And when you do that, things start to happen for you at an incredibly rapid rate. And you'll see, before this seminar is over, I can promise you, you will have experienced profound changes in your life. It happens all the time because you now have a harmonic convergence. You're now organizing your life and your thinking in harmony with these great laws. And they all start to work for you. So we say, okay, the B, it is the iron law of the universe. All other laws in the universe, I call it the umbrella law, all other laws, mathematics, physics, mechanics, all fall under the law of cause and effect. Aristotle proposed this in 350 BC, and it was called the Aristotelian principle of causality, which was a great shock to a world that believed in gods and coincidences and lightning strikes and Mount Zeus on Mount Olympus. What they said was, no, everything happens for a reason. And if we're not happy with what's happening, we can change the causes. If a person's overweight, people say, well, I'm overweight, it's because of my glands. Yes, sir, it's your mouth gland, and it's malfunctioning several times a day. You know, we know how to be healthy and fit and how to live a long time. We know how to make all the money that we want because there are hundreds of thousands of millions of people who have. Did you read the statistics in the paper this morning? Great statistics. Ta-da! In 2001, there were 7.7 millionaires in America. I'm sorry, 2001. 2011, 10 years later, after all the depression, recession, panics, crashes, and everything else, there's 10.2 million Americans with a net worth in excess of $1 million. Now, that would suggest that all these people, 90% of them started off with nothing, and they're still continuing to grow. That's a growth of what, 2.8 million? Is that what it was? It's about 2.8 million more millionaires now than there were 10 years ago. And all those people started off with nothing. So if you want to be a millionaire, then you can be a millionaire. Just do what other people who started with nothing did to become a millionaire. You know, which is probably become very good at what you do, earn good money, and don't spend it all. All right. Sorry about that. You liked the first part, you didn't like the second part. So, see, the most important application of this law is that thoughts are causes and conditions are effects. Your thoughts are what are called the primum movum, the primary moving force of your life. Your thoughts create the conditions of your life. It's very much as though you had one of the old slide projectors, and you put in a slide, it projects on the screen. Your thoughts project on the screen of your life. As the hippies used to say, wherever you go, there you are. And so wherever you look, there you are. Wherever you look in the world around you, that is your thoughts projected onto the screen of your own life. Now, many people think, well, I don't like what I'm seeing on the screen of my life, so I'm going to beat up the projector, or I'm going to beat up the screen, cut up the screen. No, what you do is you start to change the picture you have in your mind. Interesting, we'll talk about this later, but all improvement in your outer life begins with an improvement in your mental pictures. Begins with an improvement in your mental pictures by constantly starting to see yourself and your world in more positive terms. So another mental law, the law of belief. Now, this is a biggie. This is really the biggie. This is the foundation principle, by the way, of all religions and all philosophies and all success is the law of belief. It says that whatever you believe with feeling becomes your reality. Whatever you believe with feeling, with emotion, with intensity, it becomes your reality because you always act on the basis of your beliefs. And the more intensely you hold the belief, the more the belief becomes true for you. There's a gentleman that I used to know, his name was Glenn Bland, and he wrote a book called The Glenn Bland Method. And he talks about how when he was growing up, his father was a working man. And they talked around the family table, they talked about work at the lumber yard, and the father would always say, you know, when you grow up, you've got to get yourself a working job. You've got to get yourself a laboring job. He said the Blands have always been laborers. We've always worked by the sweat of our brow. And so the kids were all brought up to believe that they were supposed to get a laboring job when they got out. So he left high school, and he did quite well in high school. It was in sports and everything else, but his belief was when you entered into the world of work, you got a laboring job, so he did, on a construction crew working on the highways, digging ditches and you know, working on construction. And one day, he's been at this for about 2 or 3 years, and he's working away, goes up there in the morning, sweats all day. The traffic is moving really slowly because it's a construction zone, and right next to him, while he's working away with a shovel, there's a guy, a friend of his from high school. And he's driving the car. He says, "Hi, Glenn, how you doing?" To the window of the car. He says, "Oh, doing great." He's got his shovel here. And he says, "How's everything going?" "It's going fine." And he says, "How's everything going with you?" The guy's driving a brand new car. He's wearing a nice suit. He's well dressed. And this guy, you know, was no great flaming hell in high school, just an average guy. He said, "How you doing?" He said, "I got a great job." He said, "I'm selling, making really good money." He said, "I'm buying a new home next month and getting married at the end of the year." And he looked at him, and here's this guy, and he's living from paycheck to paycheck, sweating away. And he looked at that guy, he said, and it hit him like lightning. He had bought a bill of goods from his father. He said, this guy's no better, no smarter than he is, which happens to be the case, yet he's got a different belief system, that you get out and you get a job, and you get into business, and you get into white-collar work. He threw down the shovel, and he got up, and he walked out of there, and he said, I'll never work with a shovel again. He went and got into sales. He turned out to have a natural ability for sales. Within 2 or 3 years, he was doing extremely well. Within 7 or 8, he was a millionaire, had a beautiful home, beautiful car. He said the turning point in his life was when he challenged that belief that he was meant to be a working man all his life. Many people have beliefs, and there's 2 sets of beliefs. There's conscious beliefs that we have, and there's unconscious beliefs. And there's that wonderful line from Josh Billings, the humorist. He said, it ain't what a man knows what hurts him, it's what he knows what ain't true. And many things we know about ourselves ain't true at all. What we do is we develop scotomas, or blind spots. Is once we've decided to believe a certain thing, we do not see anything that contradicts it. We may be doing wonderful things or wonderful work or being very successful. We don't even see that if we decided to believe that we will never make much more than we're making. Sometimes your parents will tell you, you've got to worry about money, you've got to be careful about money all your life, and you'll never make very much, so you've got to hold on to every penny. And so people just hunker down, and they're more concerned about security than anything else. And so we develop these beliefs, these blind spots. And sometimes you need somebody to come along and open it up. And so you can see this vast world of possibilities that you have. And when this happens, people change completely. So your biggest obstacle is usually self-limiting beliefs. Your biggest obstacle is usually self-limiting beliefs. So what are your self-limiting beliefs? What are the most common ones? Well, the most common ones are internally, I'm not smart enough, I'm not as smart as other people, or I'm not talented enough, or I'm not creative enough, or I'm not something enough. It's just the most amazing damn thing. I remember this great story. His name was Igor, and he came to my seminar in New York, and he came to my seminar in Palm Springs. And he was a Russian immigrant. And he said he'd arrived, this was 5 years before, he arrived 5 years before from Russia, when Russia was just opening up in the 90s. And he had everything he owned on the streets of New York in a box, a cardboard box with string on it. And he didn't know a word of English, and he had to stop people on the street. He kept stopping people and asking them, looking for someone who spoke Russian. And he finally found somebody, and he would ask them something in Russian. Доброе утро, доброе утро, доброе утro. Good morning, because somebody responded back, доброе утро. And he said, where can I find Russians? I don't speak any English. He said, well, go to Little Russia. It's a little part of New York. How do you get there? He showed him how to get there on the subway. So he gets there on the subway, and this big, long elevators. And everybody ever been to New York coming up from the subway, the long, long elevator. He comes up, and the first thing he sees in Little Russia is a pizza place, which has it's a Domino's pizza with a Russian name. He goes in, he speaks to the owner in Russian. He said, I need a job. And he said, I need somebody to deliver pizza. So his first job was delivering pizza in Russian, in Little Russia, to other Russians. And that was his first job. And he did that, and the first thing he decided to do was learn English. He looked around, he said, why are so many Russians successful in America? And there's an enormously successful Russian immigrant community in New York. And he found the first thing they did is they spoke English. So he just put his head down, he began to learn English. Pretty soon he could learn English, he could deliver pizzas to both Russians and non-Russians, and after a year, his English was good enough, so he applied for a job selling printing for a printing company. And he kept studying English, and at that time, he stumbled across my audio programs. My audio programs are used by Princeton University to teach English as a foreign language in 17 languages, because they're very clear, they're grammatically correct, they're unaccented, and people who want to learn English also want to be more successful, so they get a twofer. They get success ideas, plus they learn English. Well, he started to listen to my programs, and his English got better and better. He worked for 2 years selling printing, and he could become so knowledgeable about the business, and had so many contacts, that he decided to start his own printing, brokering business. This is year 4. When he came to my seminar, it was the end of year 5. That year, he had made more than $200,000 in commissions himself in his own business, brokering printing. He said he was on track to make $300,000, $400,000. He'd be at $500,000 within 8 years of arriving off the boat with no English skills. Now, I'm not trying to suggest that we have obstacles that we create in our own minds, but imagine an immigrant with no skills, no friends, no contacts, starting off, and within 5 or 8 years making several $100,000 a year, because he had this unshakable belief that it was possible. He absolutely believed it was possible. And to him, no matter what happened, everything that happened to him was just a learning experience, because he could not even imagine not being successful. When you reach the point where you cannot even imagine not achieving great goals, your whole life changes for you. So the next meta law is the law of expectations. Now, this is a great law. There's libraries full of books. There are psychologists who worked for years on this. Dr. Robert Rosenthal of Harvard worked on this for years. And he found that your expectations, especially about your outcomes, become your own self-fulfilling prophecies. What does that mean? Is if you expect something to happen, it usually happens. It becomes your own prophecy. Because if you expect it to happen, you'll act consistent with it happening. You will treat other people the way it's going to happen. W. Clement Stone tells the story of this young man. He was running a large insurance agency. This young man was sent to him by one of his business associates. Just came out of college, it was starting off in life insurance, and he came to Clement Stone to ask him if he could get some referrals, some leads. And so Clement Stone said, yes, I'll give you some names of some top referrals. These are people who are all interested in buying life insurance or buying even more life insurance. I'll be right back. So he went into his office, and he had his secretary type up a list of names, addresses, and phone numbers. So this salesman, young salesman, went out, and he called on these people, and he was positive and enthusiastic, and he made about 4 or 5 sales, and the others, had to think about it. We're not ready to make a decision right now. So we went back to Clement Stone. He said, those leads were fantastic. Thank you so much. Can I have some more? He said, sure. He said, wonderful. He said, here, as a matter of fact, I'll get you my lead book, and you can write down the names, addresses, and phone numbers yourself. And so he went and he got the telephone book. For the Chicago phone book, he said, this is where I got the names in the first place. You can have as many as you like. Now, what happened was, the gentleman believed that these were leads given to him by one of the top business people in the country. He was worth $800 million at the time. And so he said, W. Clement Stone told me to call on you. Oh, that's great. Anyway, his expectation was that these people would buy. There's another great story of this fellow who's running a company in New York, and the company's on the verge of bankruptcy, about to collapse, and he's really in despair. He doesn't know what to do. He's going to lose his home. He's going to lose everything. And he goes for a walk in Central Park, and he's standing on this bridge in Central Park, and this man comes out of the night, comes up and stands next to him and says, hi, how are you doing? He said, fine. He said, you look like you're deep in thought. He said, yes, well, I've got a business, and the business is in trouble. He said, no problem at all. He said, I'm John D. Rockefeller. I'll lend you some money. How much money do you need to turn your business around? He said, well, probably $200,000 or $300,000. I'll give you $500,000. Pulls out a checkbook. He writes that check right there and gives him a check for $500,000, John D. Rockefeller. He said, there you go. He said, meet me back here in this place a year from now, and you can pay me back. Really? I mean, wow. He said, good luck. And he walked off into the night. Well, this is like an answer to a prayer. He couldn't believe it. He took this check back to his office. And he's sitting, this is a true story, too. Although I can't verify it. Anyway, he takes this check back, and he sits there, and he looks at this check, and he said, wait a minute. He said, my business isn't going down the drain. He said, I don't have to cash this check right yet. What I'll do is I'll put it in my safe. But if ever I need it, I've got this check. It's valid for a year. And he went back, and he turned around to his business. He got $500,000 in his safe. And he went back in, and he made revisions and changes, and he upgraded his sales and marketing, and he became more aggressive and introduced new products and services. And his business grew, and it turned around. And this business grew, and he became prosperous again. He never even had to cash the check. And 1 year passes. And he goes back to the park. He's got the check. And he's standing on the bridge. It's about 7 o'clock in the evening, and he's waiting. And after he'd been there about 10 or 15 minutes, this man comes walking quickly out of the dark, comes up, and he said, there you are again. How did everything work out? And he said, well, I'm happy to say I was able to change my business. Here's the check back. I never had to cash it. He said, well, thank you very much. It's really great. And he said, I'm so happy to hear about your success. And then this nurse comes running out of the bush saying, Mr. Hawkins, you come back here. And she comes running up and grabs him by the arm, and she said, I hope he's not been bothering you. He's escaped from the asylum over and over again, and we always have to go out in Central Park and find him. You come back with me, Mr. Hawkins, and led him back to the asylum where he had run away. My point was, because he believed that this was a check from John D. Rockefeller, it transformed his life. Not that it was, but because he believed it, his expectations were that at any time he could cash this check. And it totally transformed his attitude toward his business and his business results. Now, the wonderful thing about our expectations is that you can manufacture your own. You can manufacture your own. You can expect great things to happen. So whatever you expect with confidence becomes your own self-fulfilling prophecy. If you absolutely expect, we'll talk later about this, but the greatest of all attitudes, the catalyst that causes your potential to unlock, almost like a chemical catalyst that causes an explosive effect, is confident expectations. An attitude of confident expectations transforms your attitude towards your world. If you confidently expect that people will buy, and confidently expect that products will sell, and confidently expect that if everything fails, you'll learn a valuable lesson that you'll use to be more successful next time, if you always expect something good, you'll never be disappointed. And it has a total transforming effect on your attitude. So expectations play a critical role in your life. There's 4 types of expectations. First are the expectations of your parents. And it's the most amazing thing. I was reading a story yesterday about a fellow whose mother was alcoholic, father was gone, mother was alcoholic, and she was a mean drunk. And she would always tell him, you're worthless and you'll never amount to anything. You're worthless. About 3 or 4 children. She told them all that. You're all worthless and you'll never amount to anything. And so many people, many parents have made the mistake of criticizing their children too much when they were growing up, and their children develop a feeling that they're not really very good. And so they set low standards for themselves and achieve them. The worst of all, they say, is to set low standards for yourself and be successful. So the expectations of your parents have an inordinate impact on the person you become as an adult. And so you have to look back and realize that many parents were raised by parents with negative expectations. And in the Bible it says the sins of the fathers are visited on the children. So what your parents, grandparents did to them, they will often have inflicted on you, and you'll often grow up not really feeling that you have great potential. Your parents will have expressed the thought that they didn't really expect you to do that well. You get poor grades, well, what can you expect? You're not that smart. And you're never on time, and you never fulfill your promises, and you probably won't do that well in life. And isn't it amazing the power of negative expectations expressed by our parents when we were young, the power that that has on us as an adult. It's sort of like a sea anchor that's pulling us back, and we're struggling hard on the outside to be successful, but deep down inside, we are still fighting with those negative expectations. The other place is the expectations of your boss. You'll find that people who work under high expectations bosses who really have confidence in their staff, perform at a vastly higher level. I remember when I was in real estate, there was an office, and this office was run by this manager who was just dynamite. Positive, cheerful, happy, upbeat, and he only hired people that were of the same caliber. He wouldn't let anybody be there. You had people lined up to join this office, even though they're working on straight commission. And he would interview them, he would spend some time with them, he'd have them meet the other people, they'd do a thumbs up or a thumbs down. Eventually he had an office full of really high chargers. They're just positive, happy people, a lot of laughter. And that office, the people in that office made 3 times as much on average as the real estate people in any other office, booms or busts. During the busts, they were the most financially successful real estate agents in the market. And so people who had been struggling in one office with negative or indifferent bosses or demanding bosses or complaining or criticizing bosses, they go and they work in this place and their income would triple within a year because they're under the influence of a positive expectations boss. Now here's one of the great rules in life, which we'll come back to over and over, is that people don't change. I get this question, how can I get my wife to change, my husband to change, my boss to change, my friend to change? People don't change. In fact, the psychological studies show that people under pressure become even more so, but they don't change. And people say, well, how come you're giving a seminar if you say that people can't change? I'm saying that it's like how many psychiatrists does it take to change a light bulb? Well, the answer is only one, but the light bulb has to really want to change. And it's the same thing. Most people don't want to change. They've taken their whole lives to become the person they are, and they don't really have any desire to change. As a matter of fact, most people feel that in some degree they are superior to all other human beings. Everybody does. It's okay. I know. And so therefore, why would they change if they're already superior? And if somebody thinks that they should change, well, they're definitely superior to that person, because that person is obviously an inferior person if they would even suggest that someone as good as me change. Are you with me so far? This is called rationalizing, which we call rational lies. We tell rational lies. My friend John Assaraf talks about that. And so the expectations of your boss, and the rule is, if you're working with a negative expectations boss, go somewhere else. Because he or she will never change, and you'll never fulfill your potential under a negative expectations boss. Another is the expectations you have of others. The expectations you have of your children and your spouse, you'll find that in great relationships, each spouse expects the other to do really well and to be really successful and be really happy. The expectations you have of your children, all the time they're growing up, the expectations you have of your staff. So expectations are really, really good. Barbara and I went to a restaurant some years ago, and the hostess was a really persnickety, negative, rude. How she got to be hostess? You know, the old saying, when you first meet this kind of a person, you don't like them, but after you get to know them, you hate their guts. Well, this is the kind of woman that after about 2 or 3 minutes of standing there, you wanted to punch her in the face, and hard, you know. Anyway, So this is a first-class restaurant. I'm working for the owner of the restaurant, who owns 200 companies, and he owns several restaurants. And so we come there, we have reservations, and she said, well, just a minute. And all right, fine. All right, come with me. She grabs them, and she pranced. Remember that, Barbara? The funny look. She pranced like a schoolmarm, and she takes us to a table, they always take you to the worst table in the restaurant. This table is in the main traffic near the kitchen and the bathrooms. And I knew this was going to happen. This happens everywhere. We'll talk about this later. So I said, well, I'd much prefer that table over there, which was a quieter, private table. She said, that table's no good. I said, what's wrong? The waiter for that table is Henry, and he's no good. He's the worst waiter. You wouldn't be happy there. Sit here. And then they pull out the chair, and they shake the chair. As power of suggestion, shake the chair to get you to sit down. They put down the menus at your places and shake the chair. No, I think we'll take Henry's table. And just walked over there and sat down. She comes over, she puts the menus down, and she's nasty as can be and walks away. Well, about 2 or 3 minutes later, the waiter comes up. And I said, he said, hello, how are you? And I said, fine. I said, is your name Henry? And he said, well, yes. I said, oh, thank God, Barbara, we got Henry. And he said, what? And I said, I had some friends who were here the other night. They said, you're the best restaurant in this city. You're the best waiter in this city. And if we could come to this restaurant, if we can get a table from Henry, we're going to have a great evening. He said, who said that? He's just some friends of ours. It doesn't really matter, but we're so glad that we've got you as our waiter. And he said, really? Now, here's a tough question. What kind of service do you think we got for the rest of the evening? It was great service. Henry was there all the time. You wanted a little bit of salt and a little bit of salt. You wanted wine pour, you wanted this. I mean, Henry was fabulous, and he was smiling, and he was happy, and he was treating all of his customers well, and we tipped him. And when we walked out, we looked at her and we said, that Henry's the best waiter in this whole damn restaurant. Thank you very much. Don't. You know, Barbara's kept me off of assault charges for years. Because why? It's because they set up a positive field of expectations. And you can do that because people tend to rise to the expectations imposed on them by others or fall to the expectations. So always express positive expectations. Even if in your heart you have a lot of doubts, always be positive on the outside. And the expectations you have of others, so the rule is the expectations you have of yourself. Now, these are the expectations that can override all other expectations in your life. There are people who've come from negative backgrounds and child raisings. They've been in negative marriages with complaining spouses. They've had difficult people around them, but their expectations for themselves never wavered. A friend of mine named Peter Daniels, who started off working on the streets, became very wealthy, he's very successful in Australia, did a lifelong project, and he studied the lives of 500 men and women who became successful. He read their biographies and autobiographies and encyclopedia and Wikipedia and so on, looking for the common denominator of success. And what he found was this. He found that he read about 300 autobiographies, and he finally found the common thread. The common thread was every one of those people always believed in themselves. They always believed that they were going to be a big success in life. They always expected to do well. They said when Winnie Churchill was asked about Winston Churchill, even though he was washed up at the age of 66, and a secondary player in his party and had been laughed at for years when World War II started, they said that one thing Winston Churchill never lacked was an absolute confidence in Winston Churchill. He absolutely expected that he would be the right person at the right time, at the right place when history called on him. Patton had the same thing. He knew that he would be the right person. He said in these 500 biographies and autobiographies, every one of those people expected to be a big success. Now here's an interesting exercise. Imagine that you could go down to the computer store and you could buy a mental program and you could put it into your mental computer, and it would then become part of your continuing operating system. If you could buy any belief at all to put into your mental system, what would be the best belief for you to buy? And the answer is the belief that you are going to be a big success in life. That no matter what happens, everything is going to conspire together to make you a great success. And if you absolutely believe that and absolutely expect that everything is going to help you, that will become your reality. The reason why we do not achieve greatly is we hold ourselves back by our own beliefs. We wonder if it's possible. We over-exaggerate negative events. we catastrophize and we blow them out of proportion as opposed to looking at them and seeing them as just ideas, stepping stones to success. So we say always expect the best. And remember that your expectations are totally under your own control. Now, here's an exercise for you. Da-da-da-da. Wait a minute. Oh, okay, jeez. I'm so okay. Repeat throughout the day these words. I believe that something wonderful is going to happen to me today. Now say that to yourself. Say it quietly to yourself. I believe that something wonderful is going to happen to me today. Now say it aloud. Say it. I believe there's something wonderful that's going to happen to me today. Now every single morning when you get up and say that, something wonderful is going to happen to you that day. It's the most amazing damn thing. You go into a restaurant and you say, I believe something wonderful is going to happen in this restaurant. I believe something wonderful is going to happen to me today. And it's the most astonishing thing. If you forget to say it, your life will be okay. But if you remember to say it with confidence, you set up a force field of positive expectations and something wonderful happens to you. And when I first heard, this is really hokey. This is kind of, hey, this is la-la. This is like California where we sit, under triangles and put crystals in our armpits. This is, but it's the most amazing damn thing. When you say these words, what happens is something wonderful starts to happen to you. Okay, the next mental law is the law of attraction. The law of attraction says that you are a living magnet, and you attract into your life the people and the circumstances that are in harmony with your dominant thoughts. You're a magnet, and whatever is in harmony, the people, circumstances, ideas, money, resources that are in harmony with your thoughts, you start to attract into your life. In the universe, all energy is in a state of vibration, including mind energy. Now, your mental energy, mental energy travels at the speed of light. It travels, and it's so fine that it goes through any substance. You can think a thought here, and it can connect with someone on the other side of the world. There were many examples, by the way, in World War II, where a person's son was killed in the Pacific, and they woke up straight out of a dead sleep in the middle of the night, instantaneously, and it wasn't until days later that they learned that at that moment on the other side of the world, their son had died. You'll have occasions throughout your life where you'll think of a person, the phone will ring. It'll be them. Or you'll think of doing something and you open the newspaper and there's an article on the exact same subject. One of the things I wanted to talk about was self-made millionaires. You open the newspaper this morning, there's the most current figures on self-made millionaires from 2001, 2011. So I can come down and share it with you. So your mind is incredibly powerful, but it is a neutral law. If you think negative thoughts, you'll attract negative things into your life as well. Now this law of attraction, this is the basis of The Secret and all those things. The problem with the book, The Secret, and the movie and everything else is that it doesn't mention the word work. Which is why it's a wonderful thing. People read The Secret and say, oh, all I have to do is think happy thoughts and I'll be rich and happy. No, that ain't it. That's like as Shalene can tell you, watching and if somebody exercising on television, all I have to do is watch these people exercising and I'll be thin and fit. No, baby, you're going to get off your you-know-what and get on it. So this explains these laws. It explains the law of vibration, which says that all things vibrate outward. So thoughts vibrate outwardly from you. And the more emotion attached to a thought, the greater is the intensity of the vibration. The more emotion you have. If you think about what you're going to have for lunch, it has very little vibrational effect. But if you think about someone you love or a goal that you want to achieve or something you want to accomplish or even something you're afraid of, it has a tremendous emotional effect. It's like turning up the emotional power. Second of all is radiation. We say that everything radiates outward, almost like the ripples in a pond, and it also explains the law of what is called sympathetic resonance. You can walk into a room and you will have a resonance with another person on the other side of the room. And you meet that person and you get married and live happily for the rest of your life. If you were to take a piano and put it on this side of the room and put another piano on this side of the room and then take a tuning fork and hit the note, not tuning fork, just hit the key of C flat, bang, and so it goes bang, and you walk across the room, the key of C flat on the other piano will be vibrating to the same harmony as this piano. You and I have this experience of sympathetic resonance where we resonate with other people, we resonate with ideas, we resonate with conversations, we resonate with subjects that we like to study and learn about. We have this all the time, and that is the law of attraction. It means that something within you is resonating within something outside of you. If you want to be really successful and you see successful people and you start to resonate with their accomplishments, you start to become more like them. Now, here's an important point that people don't realize. This also explains what is called the law of repulsion. Now, the law of repulsion says that if you hold a negative thought, you repel anything associated with that thought out of your life. So many people are brought up to look down on those who are successful, to criticize successful people. This is fatal, because if you criticize successful people, even in your heart, it drives success out of your life. It guarantees that you'll never accomplish anything with your life. You'll always be miserable and unsuccessful. If you criticize wealthy people, they'll never be wealthy. And so therefore, it's so important for you to admire people who are enjoying the success that you desire. Is to admire them and look up to them, and don't look for chinks in their armor or flaws in their life or behavior. Instead, look at the things that they do right and say, that I could do that. Read their books, read stories about them, and admire successful, happy people. If you admire successful, happy people, you create this sympathetic resonance, and you begin to attract into your life people and circumstances and ideas that will enable you to be like one of those people. When people criticize other successful people, it has no effect on the successful people. It doesn't hurt them at all. They don't even know, and they don't care. But it destroys the criticizer's chances for success. They're shooting themselves in their own foot, blam, and admiring their own marksmanship. Geez, I'm a good shot. One of the characteristics of poor people is they look down on rich people. Do you know that people on welfare actually feel that people who work are suckers? And it's the most amazing thing. When you interview them, they're not grateful for welfare. They resent the welfare, but they look at the people who work and have to pay taxes to enjoy the welfare. They look at them as suckers. These are suckers. I don't work. I stay at home, watch television, drink, snort, whatever I do. And these suckers got to go to work every day, isn't that? And they actually look down on their benefactors. Now, what is the chance of them ever having any success in life? In the zero range? Probably nothing. They'll never be successful, and they'll never understand that their own mentality is what drives out all possibility of success from their lives. So always admire success, and always want for others what you want for yourself. If you want to be a big success and you see somebody successful, say, that's great, congratulations, that's wonderful, because if you can get it, I can get it. Abraham Lincoln once said that some are rich as proof that others can be rich as well. And so what we do is we look up to successful people. Now, the law of correspondence, this is my favorite. I love this law. It says, as within, so without. And this brings us to my favorite ratio. And my favorite ratio is this, the 1-to-1 ratio. And basically what it says is what is going on in your outer world corresponds to what is going on in your inner world. As within, so without. One of the greatest of all spiritual principles. What's going on inside corresponds on the outside. We say your outer world is a mirror that reflects what is going on in your inner world. We say wherever you look, there you are. What you see is your own self, your own thoughts reflected back to you. And the places that you see this, most of all, you see it in your relationships. Is the person you are on the inside is perfectly reflected by your relationships. You see it in your financial situation. Your depths of preparation and work and attitude toward money is reflected in your financial world. You see it in your health. Your attitudes toward health, fitness, food, everything else is reflected in your physical body and so on. Always on the outside. There's one of my great spiritual teachers was Emmett Fox, and he wrote a piece, which the name of which is Enough. And the piece was called, it's called The Mental Equivalent. And he said, the great requirement of life is for you to create within yourself the mental equivalent of what you wish to enjoy on the outside. This is your responsibility, and God and nature will take care of everything else by law. So therefore, that's why reading, thinking, planning, visualizing, all the things we'll talk about, so you can create within your mind a mental equivalent of what you want to enjoy on the outside. And the greater vividness with which you can see it on the inside, the faster it comes into your reality on the outside. Most people have only a vague, fuzzy, unclear goal or idea of what they want, and as a result, what happens in their life is vague and fuzzy and unclear. Successful people have a crystal clear picture of what they want, and as a result, it comes into reality quite quickly. So we say here, as within, so without. And here are the three great principles. This is the great principle that underlies all thought for the last 6,000 years, that you become what you think about most of the time. You become what you think about most of the time. Now, this is always true, but there are exceptions, because if there weren't exceptions, every young man would turn into a young woman by the age of 20. All causation is mental. This, again, is the great, profound discovery that all causation is mental. Everything you see in the material world around you began with a thought in the mind of a person. And that thought turned into a goal, which turned into a plan, which began to take physical reality. In fact, just writing down a goal and making it concrete on paper is the beginning of this process. And so here's the most important principle of all, is you change your thinking and you change your life. You change your thinking and you change your life. And wonderfully enough, going right back to the law of control, the only thing over which you have complete control is your thinking. And if you can control your thinking, everything else will change for you. It's the hardest thing of all, yet the most important. And when you learn how to do it, as you will in our time together, your whole life will be completely different. Now, there are 7 mental laws. There's some exercises here. What I want you to do is I want you to complete these exercises. Just write down your answers. Number 1, in what areas of your life do you feel most in control? I wrote down mostly at home. When you walk into the house and you close the door behind you, this is your place. It's in complete control, or in your car. Or there's some things that you do really well. You feel tremendously in control when you're doing those things. Where do you feel in control? What areas of your life are you failing to plan for the success you deserve? In what areas of your life would you be helped? Let's put it this way. If you had very clear, specific written plans and blueprints that you worked on each day to achieve those goals. Financial, business, health, family. What are the main causes of the main effects in your life? You can just write yourself. Number 4 is a good question. What self-limiting beliefs could be holding you back? Remember, removing self-limiting beliefs is the first step, or identifying them is the first step to eliminating them. Awareness of the beliefs that you might have. You say, what might be holding me back? Well, maybe I don't believe. I had a fellow who was very, very successful, and he was up to $50,000 a year, after which he just burned out. Very successful in sales and business, but he couldn't make more than $50,000 a year. Finally, we sat down with him and said, why? You know, he makes that amount of money halfway through the year and then just dawdles for the rest of the year. He said, well, my father never made more than $50,000 a year, and he told me that I never make more than he did. And so when he hit the 50,000 mark, he was programmed to have a default switch. He just stopped working until we finally convinced him that what his father said had no relevance on you at all. It's a self-limiting belief. You can earn all you want. The next year, earn $150,000. So we all have these ideas that I can't earn more than this, or I'm not entitled to earn more than that, and so on, which we'll talk about. And what are your expectations for yourself and your career? What are your expectations for your financial situation? How much do you want to be worth? What level of success do you want to achieve in your business? What title? What are the parts of your life that you have attracted to yourself because of the person you are? These are really in-depth questions, aren't they? And what is it in you that is creating the world around you? Just write down the first answers you think of to the questions for which you have a ready answer. The whole purpose of these questions is just to help you think a little bit.